Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever looked at your astrological birth chart and wondered, well, if that celestial map truly reflects the stars exactly as they were, right above you the moment you were born?
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're diving deep into an inquiry that really challenges some long-held assumptions about astrology and maybe even some narratives surrounding the history of astronomy itself.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here is how deeply our understanding of the cosmos has become, well, intertwined with historical stories.
Mhm.
And some of these stories, it turns out, are maybe less factual than we generally believe.
Right.
We'll be scrutinizing tables of celestial positions, ancient calendars, even looking at the origins of our constellations to uncover some pretty surprising truths.
Our source material for this deep dive is incredibly rich. We've got detailed correspondences, comparative charts, some deep historical analysis, and even a look at how ancient civilizations actually measured the heavens.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission, really, is to uncover why so many astrological charts today might be completely off and, shed some light on the real, often overlooked history of how we've mapped the sky.
And you'll discover that what seems like just a simple celestial map can have profound implications for accuracy.
Yeah.
And those nuggets of knowledge you might be seeking, well, they often come from questioning what we've always just sort of taken for granted.
Definitely. And before we jump right in, we should probably give you the exact pronunciations for a couple of key terms we'll be mentioning. There's Astrodienst, that's Astrodienst,
Right.
and UAU, which is just UAU, the Universal Astronomers Union.
Got it.
So let's start with the central puzzle, how these celestial maps are even made. You go to an astrologer, right, for a birth chart.
Mm-hmm.
They create this map showing positions of planets, the sun, the moon, all at your exact birth time. And to do this, they use something called tables of ephemerides.
Mm-hmm.
But here's where it gets really interesting. There's a crucial difference, isn't there? There are astronomical ephemerides and astrological ones. Can you break down that fundamental difference for us?
Precisely. Yeah, the key distinction is really how the zodiacal circle itself is divided up. Astrological ephemerides, they slice it into 12 perfectly equal 30-degree portions.
Okay, like neat pizza slices?
Exactly. So an astrological chart might tell you, say, Sun at 24 degrees Scorpio.
Right, I've seen that.
But astronomers, they just don't use that equal division. They base their measurements on one single universal reference point, the vernal point, the spring equinox,
Oh, okay.
which they mark as 0 degrees, or you could say 360 degrees. So an astronomer wouldn't say 24 Scorpio. They'd say the sun is at the 210th degree of the circle.
Wow.
It's a completely different way of mapping the sky.
That's a huge difference right from the start then. So if you're looking at your birth chart online, chances are it's using that astrological method.
Very likely, yes.
And our sources specifically point to this software, Astrodienst, as being connected to a lot of those sites.
That's what the material suggests, yeah.
And we have this really compelling case study to illustrate it. This correspondence with a Canadian astrologer, Lucy. Her real name's Ingrid Arboin. She went to the UAU website, maybe expecting something familiar,
Right.
but found a truly astronomical birth map that looked totally different. What was the sort of visual shock for her?
Well, the visual difference is pretty stark. The Astrodienst charts, even the ones today, they display positions based on a geocentric projection.
Geocentric, meaning Earth-centered.
Exactly. Earth and the North Celestial Pole are right there in the middle, and the sun's just positioned among the other planets, as if you're looking up from Earth.
Okay.
But that contrasts really sharply with the heliocentric, the sun-centered model.
Which is how things actually are, astronomically speaking.
Precisely. It's the model astronomers use to calculate the true celestial positions. So you're looking at the solar system from two completely different viewpoints, really.
Okay, so the UAU, this Universal Astronomers Union, they focus only on astronomy and its history. And they offer these astronomical birth charts with the real positions, not the interpretations.
Correct. No astrological commentary, just the positions.
But how do we know their charts are reliable? Our source material seems to go into a lot of detail validating them.
It does. Our sources provide a really meticulous validation, actually. They compare the UAU charts against data from a well-regarded astronomer, Xavier Jubier.
Xavier Jubier. Okay.
Yes, he's an active collaborator with NASA, member of the IAU, the International Astronomical Union, since 2012. His IAU number is even listed,
Yeah.
15159.
Wow, specific.
It is. And the document we looked at even notes that Jubier's own investigations helped correct an error the Louvre Museum had made in dating the Dendera zodiac.
No kidding, the Dendera zodiac.
Yeah, so his data clearly carries significant weight in the astronomical community.
So this deep dive we're referencing, it goes into painstaking detail, comparing the UAU chart's positions for a specific date, June 1st, 2025, planet by planet against Jupiter's ephemerides.
That's right. Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, even Pluto.
And what did that head-to-head comparison show?
It showed a really striking consistency. For almost every major body, Sun, Moon, Mercury, right through to Neptune, the UAU chart positions matched Xavier Jubia's data down to the minute.
Down to the minute, that's precise.
Extremely. There was a very minor difference noted with Pluto, like maybe 3 minutes or so.
Okay.
But the UAU actually concluded Jubia's data was likely more reliable even there, just based on the consistency across everything else. It suggests the UAU charts are remarkably accurate and aligned with these very high astronomical standards. Even, interestingly, suggesting Jupiter's data might be more reliable than sources like the IMCCE in France for certain things.
That is interesting. So, okay, we've established the UAU charts are likely very accurate astronomically. What does this mean when we circle back to your average astrological birth chart, like the one from AstroDienst?
Well, this is where it gets visually quite revealing.
Right. The source material superimposes them, doesn't it? Lucy the astrologer's AstroDienst chart from 1970 on top of a UAU astronomical chart for the same date.
Exactly. And the visual comparison is, well, it's pretty startling.
What do you see immediately?
The immediate thing you notice is that apart from the sun, which they seem to use as an alignment point, the positions of all the other celestial bodies shown by AstroDienst are, well, they're visibly shifted.
Shifted how much?
Noticeably. If you line up the suns, you see clear discrepancies. The source mentions several minutes or degrees for the other planets. Take Neptune, for example.
Right.
The line indicating Neptune's position on the AstroDienst chart is off by more than 4 degrees compared to the accurate UAU position.
4 degrees? That sounds like a lot in astronomical terms.
It's huge, more than 10 minutes of arc. That's a massive difference when you're supposed to be mapping precise celestial locations.
Wow. So this means pretty much all the other planets and points on these AstroDienst charts are shifted, sometimes by quite a bit.
That's the conclusion drawn, yes. Shifted by 1 minute to over 10 minutes.
So the source is pretty unambiguous then. It says AstroDienst ephemerides are not at all reliable.
Correct.
And therefore, any astrological aspects, those lines people draw inside the circle connecting planets, representing relationships.
All right. The trines, the squares, oppositions.
Those are inherently inaccurate too because they're based on these faulty starting positions.
Exactly. If the fundamental positions you're connecting are wrong, the geometric relationships you draw between them can't be right either.
It really makes you rethink the accuracy of those, free online birth charts everyone uses, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It fundamentally challenges the whole idea of astrology being an exact or reliable science. If the foundational data, the physicians themselves, are incorrect, then the complex interpretations built on top of them, well, they lose their empirical basis.
Right. It begs the question, what are those charts actually mapping, if not the real sky?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And this unreliability, it isn't just about modern software, is it? Our source material argues this goes way deeper into history itself. We often think of astrology as being ancient, stretching back thousands of years.
That's the common narrative.
But the sources suggest a very different timeline. They propose that astrology as we know it really only appeared in the Renaissance, largely thanks to the printing press making tables and charts distributable.
Right.
So what does that imply about accuracy before the Renaissance?
Well, it implies that before around 1679, when the first truly reliable, widely published ephemerides came out, making precise astrological charts was simply impossible. You didn't have the accurate data.
Okay, so if modern astrology is more of a Renaissance thing, what about ancient Greece and Rome? We always hear about them and astronomy and stars.
Yeah, and that's another area our sources challenge quite strongly. They assert that ancient Greek astronomy is a myth, even calling it a children's tale.
Wow, strong words. Why?
The claim is that no direct, verifiable ancient Greek astronomical documents like observational records or detailed calculations have actually survived.
None.
According to these sources, no. They suggest the whole concept of advanced Greek scientific prowess in this area was basically created from scratch in the mid-19th century.
Why then?
By the Hellenist movement, partly as a way to rival the growing field of Egyptology, which was finding tangible evidence. So the historical portrayal of figures like Hipparchus, Eratosthenes, Archimedes, at least regarding detailed astronomy, is questioned.
That's a radical revision of history. And does this extend to calendars too? Did Greece and Rome have accurate calendars?
The source argues no. Neither ancient Rome nor Greece used a truly reliable solar calendar. There's that old saying, renvoyer au calendrier grec, to postpone something to the Greek calends.
Meaning postpone it indefinitely.
Exactly, because the argument goes, the Greeks didn't have fixed calends or a reliably fixed calendar system tied to the sun.
So if not Greece or Rome, where did our reliable solar calendar originate, according to this view?
It points firmly to ancient Egypt. Their solar calendar, based on careful observation, yielding 365.04 days, their understanding of the sidereal day being 23 hours, 56 minutes. That provided the stability.
And how did it get to Rome?
Julius Caesar is credited with bringing it to Rome, but it was apparently Octavius Augustus who really implemented it properly. The sources even suggest he added January and February between December and March to fix the year's structure, possibly also as a symbolic move related to Caesar's assassination.
Adding John and Feb between Deglo and Mar, that's weird to think about now.
It completely reframes how we think about their months, doesn't it?
Yeah, so if that's true, then their March wasn't our March. It was more like our January.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which astrologically gets linked to Capricorn and aligns with the timing of their Saturnalia festival, the winter solstice celebrations.
So the whole idea of Mars, the god of war, being linked to March, that's just a later mix-up, an anachronism.
According to this perspective, yes. It highlights how bizarre it is to just directly map ancient Roman myths and their original calendar onto our modern calendar and astrological signs as if it's a seamless fit.
Okay, that historical context is fascinating. And this deep dive also tackles the specific sign of Aries, right? Astrologers usually start Aries around March 21st.
Correct. The spring equinox date, roughly.
But our sources argue this is a fundamental confusion, that this date comes from the Paschal Lamb Easter, which is religious, not astronomical.
That's the argument. Astronomically speaking, the constellation Aries doesn't actually begin until around April 19th.
April 19th. Why the big gap?
It's due to the precession of the equinoxes. That vernal equinox point, the zero Aries point astrologers use, slowly drifts backwards against the backdrop of the constellations. It shifts about 1 degree every 72 years.
Okay.
So while the Council of Nicaea back in 325 CE set Easter based on the equinox falling around March 20th, and the Gregorian calendar reform in 1582 adjusted things based on it being around March 10th then, the point has kept moving. By 2025, it's regressed about another 5 degrees from where it was in 1582. Astrology essentially freezes the signs relative to the equinox date, ignoring this ongoing shift of the actual constellations behind it.
So astrology is using a fixed map while the actual sky is slowly changing its alignment?
In essence, yes. And what's also interesting here is how the appearance of constellations plays into this.
How so?
The current official IAU constellation drawings, done by Alan McRobert, are criticized in our source material for being, well, almost unrecognizable stick figures.
Really?
Yeah, like an Aries that only shows its tail, not the classic horns people imagine. Contrast that with older drawings, and especially the source highlights the Egyptian depiction of Aries from the Dendera zodiac. It's called the oldest and most realistic, showing a couched ram with a front paw unfolded.
Suggesting the Egyptians were better observers.
It suggests that perhaps the ancient Egyptians, with their famously clear desert skies, and maybe even sharper eyesight before certain diseases became widespread, they might have been the real pioneers in accurately observing and depicting even the fainter stars, stars beyond magnitude 6, which form these shapes.
That's a fascinating thought. Okay, so if the astronomical placements in astrology are off, and historical links are maybe not what we thought, how on earth do astrologers come up with the character traits for each sign, like Aries being courageous or cerebral?
Right, where does that come from? Well, the answer provided in our sources is quite shocking, actually.
Okay.
It claims they do so in function of the biographies of celebrities written since the year 1583, specifically aligning with the Gregorian calendar reform date.
Wait, based on celebrity biographies? Seriously?
That's the assertion. For example, the cerebral quality sometimes linked to Aries. The source connects it to a René Descartes, born March 31st.
Who was famously cerebral, yes.
Engineering talent. Linked to Wernher von Braun, the rocket scientist, born March 23rd. Courageous traits. attributed based on Rudolf Christoph von Gersdorff,
Right.
born March 27th, who tried to assassinate Hitler.
So they look at famous people born under the astrological sign dates and then assign those traits to the sign itself.
It seems to be a system built on looking backwards at famous lives that fall within those date ranges. Yes, a kind of post hoc rationalization.
That's quite something. And here's where astronomy itself gets pulled into controversy in our sources, right? There's a claim about astronomers and Hitler.
Yes, this is a particularly pointed claim in the source material. It states that back in 1919, the same year the IAU was founded, there were apparently attempts by some astronomers to reclassify Adolf Hitler.
Reclassify him how?
Well, Hitler was born April 20th. Astrologically, that makes him a Taurus, usually associated with Venus.
Okay.
But astronomically, as we just discussed, the constellation Aries actually begins around April 19th. So Hitler was born right on that cusp, technically in astronomical Aries. The source claims these astronomers tried to push the idea he should be considered an Aries associated with Mars, the god of war, because it fit the later narrative of him being a warlike figure.
So a deliberate attempt to make his astronomical sign fit his later actions, blurring science and myth.
That's the strong allegation made in the source material, yes. It presents this as an example of astronomy potentially being misused to bolster mythology. The source even speculates this kind of thing might be why the Nobel Prize Committee historically hasn't awarded a prize specifically for astronomy, arguing some discoveries or applications haven't always, in their view, advanced humanity but perhaps reinforced harmful myths.
That is a very provocative claim.
It absolutely is,
Yeah.
and it emphasizes the core point. Character traits aren't inherently linked to celestial positions in any demonstrable way. You find artists, scientists, authors, navigators, who are all astrological Aries, completely refuting a narrow warrior stereotype. And conversely, you look at modern leaders involved in conflicts, like Putin or Netanyahu, born under Libra or Virgo, respectively, signs linked to Venus or Mercury, not Mars. And it clearly shows no correlation between their astrological sign and their actions.
It's a powerful argument for really separating genuine astronomical observation from all the mythological narratives that have been layered on top over the centuries.
Definitely. Drawing a clear line.
So, wrapping this up, what have we really unpacked today? It seems clear that contemporary astrological birth charts, especially from systems like AstroDienst, are demonstrably inaccurate when you compare them to actual, verifiable astronomical positions.
Yes. The reliance on flawed ephemerides means the very foundation is shaky, according to this analysis.
And connecting that to the bigger picture, we've explored how many common beliefs about astrology's ancient roots, especially in Greece and Rome, might actually be historical myths based on what our sources argue.
Right, with the evidence pointing more towards ancient Egypt for the origins of reliable astronomical observation and solar calendars, it really does reorient the historical perspective.
And we've seen how myth, religion, even celebrity biographies seem to have warped both astrology and, arguably, even some aspects of modern astronomy's history, leading to these potentially baseless connections between stars and character.
It's a potent reminder of how our perception of the cosmos has been shaped by so much more than just pure scientific observation. Culture, history, storytelling, it's all mixed in.
So in the end, the UAU, according to our sources, stands out by offering something different. Birth maps based purely on reliable astronomical data, no interpretations, just the facts of the sky.
Exactly. They provide something perhaps more profound in its own way, an accurate reflection of the heavens at the moment of birth.
It really leaves us with a challenging thought, doesn't it? If our understanding of ourselves through things like astrology has potentially been shaped by a celestial map that doesn't quite match the actual sky, what other areas of our lives might be built on foundations we haven't truly examined critically?
That's a great question to ponder.
For you, the learner listening, this isn't just about debunking one thing. It's really about the power of critical thinking, questioning assumptions, and maybe rediscovering the sheer beauty of genuine astronomical knowledge itself.